the separate documentation for the same there. Okay. In our last discussion, after discussing the ISO part, ISO reference architecture, we moved on into the NIST one, where the NIST capability is actually defined based on these five different roles given here, right? So these roles we were discussing in our last discussion. So let's move out from here only. So we are still into the domain number first. And there are a couple of more things which we have to understand from this domain. And then after we'll move on to the another domain, which is basically onto the cloud data part. I mean the data security. Right. So let's start. So as we aware about the architecture and the framework, these are the two different important terms which we are actually utilizing there when it comes to the cloud computing. So architecture and the framework is going to help you set up your solution as per the standard requirement, right? See, every organization is having a certain specific requirement. So the first thing we have to understand what exactly the end goal is, what exactly we are looking for. Because definitely any solution, if you're targeting, your first goal is to understand what problem we are trying to resolve, what problem we are actually trying to solve, right? So if you are aware about the problem, then based on that, we are going to select the solution. Like cloud is basically helping us to solve some problems for us, right? The problem could be the cost part for your organization. I mean, you are investing a huge money onto the IT infrastructure, the maintenance part, electricity part, and very many different things which will come into the picture when you are actually running one data center. Similarly, very many other expenses are also there, which is going to come into the picture. So point is, now we don't need to expend our money into the capital, investments here, right? We don't need to purchase any solution here, specifically in terms of hardware. Whatever we are purchasing here, that is in form of solution. So that's the reason it is called as a service. Any product we are purchasing in cloud is basically available as a service, right? So when you're purchasing any service, now the next thing coming into the picture is basically to set up, right? See, solution purchasing is definitely one thing we have there. Now we have a solution, like we have a firewall, we have a expensive, might be the hardware, virtualization solution, whatever. I mean, we purchase the solution. Now what? Now it needs to be set up, right? So normally you must be looking for a particular service. So that service you will configure on that server or whatever solution you are using it. Like if I'm purchasing the firewall needs to be configured for filtering the traffic, right? What next? Next thing is that solution is configured with the best practices followed as per the standard. Because see, think from two different perspectives. One is the cloud consumer and the another is the cloud provider. Cloud provider is offering services to their consumer, end user. Consumer. So first of all, are we aware about what exactly the consumer requirement is? See, one of the most important thing we need to understand from the cloud perspective, that cloud provider, specifically the public cloud provider, is not serving a specific set of consumers, right? They are actually targeting a broad number of customers there, might be for a particular location. But most of the cloud provider you will see, which is there in the market, is trying to target global customers, right? And because they are trying to target the global customer, they also have to understand their requirement. I mean, let's assume I'm in India and I'm trying to target the European customer. I'm trying to target the Middle East customers, right? So in such case, I have to actually understand what exactly the regulations, compliance, data protection, right, requirements those customers is having. So these requirements also you have to understand apart from what problem you're trying to solve for yourself. So you are purchasing a solution. So you know there is a particular problem you are trying to solve, right? Next, because you are targeting a broad number of customers, so now you have to understand their problems as well. So cloud providers have to understand the broad range of services which is normally required by the customers. And as per that, what are the different regulations, compliance, data protection, privacy, right? All these requirements provider have to understand and accordingly. Yeah. Yes, Mr. Bolaji, you have any question? Okay. So we have to understand the requirement and then only we need to proceed on. Right now, framework and standards will help you to structure those solutions in a particular manner so it can mostly solve all the customer base which we are actually targeting. And based on that only, these two things with two reference architecture given there. One is the cloud computing reference architecture given there by the ISO. And we had seen in our last session that ISO is trying to solve that problem with the help of a different approach. So they are actually trying to check what is the user view, what is the functional view, what is the implementation view, what is the deployment view. Okay, so what user is looking for, what problem that user is trying to solve, right? All these things, all these requirements, they're actually trying to illustrate. So user view, say remember, I'm just trying to recall this last session here. So user view is trying to capture the role and activity of the cloud services, right? Functional view will translate this activity into a specific functional component. And then based on that, some multi-layer functionality will be implemented. So we have a user view, which is going to influence the functional view, right? I mean, user requirements and expectation drive the functionality. So if you capture the user requirement based on that only, you will be deciding which function I will be keeping it for my cloud. Once that functional view is determined, okay, it will help you to define implementation view, how that function will be implemented. And based on that implementation, deployment will be captured, right? So all these things will come into the picture when it comes to the implementation itself. So over and all, when it comes to cloud, it is trying to resolve a certain problem. Okay. Based on the requirement and frameworks, standards, best practices is actually going to help you align these requirements to be implemented properly as per the business requirement. Right. So ISO we already discussed. Now let's move on to the NIST part. So the in front of you, the picture, what exactly you are seeing is basically coming from NIST side. Right. And as per NIST, so they are specifically targeting on these broad roles. Right. And I will recommend from the examination point of view, make sure that you are aware about these 5 roles. So definitely few questions you may be getting in the examination from there, Sam. Right. So some of them we are already discussed in our last session, like provider. Provider is used to offer the services. And if you can see here in this provider view, first provider will have a facility, right? So they must require a proper infrastructure. That infrastructure is going to keep the hardware. Okay, that hardware and infrastructure and the facility will compose a physical resource layer, which will be abstracted with the help of virtualization. And based on that, the services will be offered to the consumer, right? So you have to actually read it in this way. Similarly, when it comes, provider is going to offer you the service, they are going to offer services in a different way. Like one of them is the business support they will provide you, right? And when it comes to business support, definitely in the business support, like they will help you to purchase the service. They will help you to make sure that you can make the adjustment as per the business requirement. They will help you to do the provisioning of those services, configuration of the services as well. And apart from that, definitely the portability and interoperability requirement is also there. Now, even that 2 part also we discuss, interoperability and portability. Remember, these 2 terms are very important when it comes to the CCSP. right? Portability and interoperability. So definitely 2 to 3 questions are going to be from there. So make sure that you are clear on this. And definitely the other expectation from the provider we have, remember, in cloud, we are expecting cloud providers to offer you security, right? And definitely security can be implemented in a different way. Like one of them is onto the cloud platform, right? So we are making sure that security is implemented on the cloud provider based on the need, right? And definitely within cloud, once you purchase the cloud, within cloud, those services are also needed to be secured. So even that requirement is also there. So these are the two security requirement we have, although we will discuss, I mean, because the entire course is on the security. So definitely the security is our core focus area. So we'll discuss more on that. So for now, just understand, provider is equally responsible to secure your products. Okay, they can't say that, hey, because you purchase the service, you are the one who is responsible for the security. No, they are offering you service. So definitely they have to ensure that those services are from the baseline perspective, it is secured. Right, like when you are taking any images in the cloud. Images for what? Images for your container formation, images for your virtual machine formation, whatever your end goal is. Right, so that image should be secure. But once with the help of that image, if you created any virtual machine, now that virtual machine security is your responsibility. Because your provider is not able to see what exactly you're doing inside the VM, right? And if they are able to see, definitely it's one of the breach of the contract where you don't have the privacy. So not only you're looking for a security, but you're also expecting privacy from the provider. Okay. Privacy at the broad level, how can you define? Right. See, privacy is about if I'm sharing any data with a cloud provider, that data should be remain with them only. Unauthorized sharing, unauthorized, distribution, that should be prevented. Okay. So privacy is specifically in today's environment where we have multiple regulations coming into the picture, is actually playing a very important role. So privacy is basically giving you rights as an individual. It is giving you rights to control or influence what information about you is collected, how it is used, and with whom it is shared. Right. So over and all, it is going to provide you the ability to keep personal information confidential and to ensure that it's protected from unauthorized access. Definitely, when you're sharing any data with a cloud provider, one of the first concern you have is that what about if my provider itself is able to see and distribute data without my authorization? Right. This security and privacy, although we are discussing in a very simple manner for now, but it's actually one of the biggest concern of the cloud consumer for now there, when specifically if they're deciding to move into the cloud. Many of my customer, which I had actually worked with, whenever we are suggesting any product which is security product, and if it is working on cloud, they always have a concern of data sovereignty, right? They always have a concern that I have a strict regulation where I cannot keep my data outside a particular jurisdiction, right? And based on that, most of the customer is not looking to select any of the cloud-based product what they require for their business, although it is going to be very cost-effective solution there. Like one example you can take is the SIM solution. Security information and event management tool will help you to collect data about whatever happening in your organization, and based on it will help you to decide what action you should be taking. So think about some of the cloud-based SIM solution nowadays we have, like in Azure, we have Azure Sentinel. So Azure Sentinel is a cloud-based SIM solution. Similarly, mostly all SIM solution providers are also offering you the cloud-based solution. So with cloud-based solution, you are getting lots of good flexibility. I mean, they are providing you a tremendous amount of storage with low cost. And the other features which we discussed in our last discussion, like on-demand self-service rapid elasticity, all these features you are getting it there. But because they cannot keep data outside of the regulation, they can't select the same solution. Even if the provider is saying that we cannot keep your data outside a particular jurisdiction, at the end of the day, I had seen most of the customer are very sensitive and very tentative while sharing any data with the cloud provider. And the board of directors to convince them, it's actually one of the very painful tasks, specifically if you're working as a you know technical engineer or consultant there. It's actually very painful task to convince board of directors until unless you have a very strong connections there with them, right? Again, based on my and my few of my colleagues' experience, I am actually saying this, right? But yes, over and all, these are some of the services which is going to offer by the provider. Apart from that, so provider is offering service to whom? Consumer. Yes, Nada, you have question.
Hi Raju, I have a small question. So for
Yeah.
example, I am a customer, cloud customer, platform PaaS. Okay. Then I want to deploy my project in a WebLogic server. So I will be requesting for a WebLogic server and database also, maybe like SQL server. So cloud will provide me the instances, right, for WebLogic and database. Then I can deploy my code in the WebLogic server to connect to the database and run the application, correct? So in that case, whether me or the cloud provider, service provider will be responsible for the connectivity between WebLogic and the database. If the connection is through SSL, who is responsible to renew the certificate and make sure the SSL connectivity is fine?
Okay. Now, I think first of all, we are coming into a little bit off link here, but just for your information, definitely it depends on what exactly the service you are purchasing. Even if you are purchasing the PaaS, platform as a service, so that time it is your responsibility only to get the digital certificate and make sure that it is integrated properly, because your provider maximum can offer you the solution. Like digital certificate they can offer you, but how exactly it is integrated with your application, they are not aware about. And even the connectivity with the database, it's your responsibility, because even if you're getting a database service in the form of PaaS, okay, but the connection is string, you only have to generate based on, because if the provider is generating, it means just assume that your provider can connect as well, okay, with your database, and definitely it is one of the alarming situation for you there. So it's you only, you have to connect, you only have to protect and definitely manage the services as well there, right? So even in the PaaS, it's your responsibility to manage the product there. Remember,
Okay.
in PaaS, definitely provider is having certain responsibility to manage the infrastructure. But after that, your responsibility to make sure that your services are configured properly and manage as per your business requirement. Okay.
Thank you, Raju.
Now, so now let's move on to another one. So as I told, that provider is offering services to the consumer. So this is the another role which NIST is focusing on. So provider will helping us to get the relevant product, and consumer will be consuming the same here for us. Okay. So these are the two roles which is, I think, is very straightforward for us. Provider will offer and consumer will consume. Now coming to the other role, like we have a cloud carrier, which is going to carry the services from one point to another. Like one simple example we can take is the internet service provider. See, if you don't have the internet service provider, definitely we are not able to get the services from provider, and definitely it is not able to deliver it to the consumer there. So cloud carrier will help us to carry the services and definitely deliver to the end user, whoever is expecting. And it is not only about the end user, even the other entity also required that carrier to connect and manage. Right. Now consumer, while they're consuming the services, so one possibility is that you already have the relevant manpower who understand the cloud and help configure the cloud for you there. But think about a situation you don't have that manpower. I mean, you don't have that experienced people in your organization. What you will do in such case? So in such case, you have to take services from some third party as well there. I mean, who understand the providers well and deliver it well. So nowadays, lot many consulting organizations are there, right? Who can actually help you get the consulting. And when I say consulting, it is not only about helping you to understand the best practices and get it implemented, but also they will help you to implement it properly. And later on, they will help you to test it properly there. So here it is basically called as the cloud broker. Okay, cloud broker. So broker is one of the entity who will help you to get the services, right? And not only it is helping consumer, it is also helping provider. I mean, think about a situation that every time I need to get any service, I'm always connecting to the broker, right? Let's suppose I wanted to have a cloud service. I went to the broker and say, hey, I'm looking to move into the cloud. Can you help me? Now broker will, what he will do, he will purchase services from provider and deliver it to the consumer there. So in such way, broker is helping provider to get more and more business as well, right? So here broker can offer services in different way. Like one of the simplest ways is service intermediation. So what is this? So we have a service provider like Azure or AWS. We are getting services from there. Okay. That services will be modified or delivered as it is to the consumer. So these services will be taken by the consumer, but now in between we have a broker who will get the services from provider and modify as per the requirement of the consumer and then get it delivered. So when I say modify, what does it mean? Let's suppose from the provider I purchased one virtual machine. Okay. Now modification means the virtual machine in the very plain format is coming with some certain operating system, but that operating system should have been configured with some certain services based on the consumer requirement. So modification means configure it as per the requirement of the consumer and deliver it to them what they require. Right. So what is happening here? Simply broker is purchasing the services, making certain adjustment as per the consumer requirement and getting delivered to the consumer. So that is a simple thing, right? And I think in the last session, I also taken one example, like you can take an example of Exchange and very many consulting organizations are there, which can help you get the services implemented as per your requirement, right? And might be after that, even the continuous maintenance contract also given there to that consulting organization only who will maintain the entire flow of the work. Now these brokers can also offer the aggregation capability. So what is aggregation? See, let's take an example. I wanted to deliver a service. I mean, consumer is looking for a web service to get it delivered, but for a web service to operate nowadays, we actually looking we may have to integrate multiple services here. So web service, not only web service. I mean, yeah, definitely I can purchase one web service there, but I cannot deliver it as it is, right? Because there is lots of security concern, privacy concern also the consumer is having. So now multiple services first will be purchased, then configured, aggregated and delivered to the consumer. So we have a VM which where the traffic will come through the firewall. So you have to also purchase a firewall service. You also require event logging services there. You may also require the database services. You may also require might be the key vault or such certain thing where you can actually manage your secret services there, right? So what is happening here in the aggregation? We are purchasing multiple services and aggregating, configuring properly, and then delivering to the consumer there. So aggregation where we are purchasing, configuring and delivering there. So aggregation where multiple products are actually aggregated to deliver a certain service. Okay. Now the advanced form of aggregation is service arbitrage. So arbitrage means, see, most of the time you will see that consumers are purchasing services from multiple vendors. So they are actually following the multi-vendor, solution here. Multi-vendor means, I mean, there is a possibility for the storage services you are relying on AWS. So in AWS might be one of the object service we are using is called as S3. Okay. So I'm purchasing S3 for storage from AWS. Virtual machine I'm purchasing might be from Google. Analytics capability I'm taking from GCP, again, Google. Identity services I'm actually using from where? From Azure. So there is a complete possibility either to decrease cost or to deliver very efficient product to the consumer, you are taking services from multiple different vendor. And definitely even in your organization also, I am very much sure that you are following the same practice. Let's assume that your server is from HP. It doesn't mean that you are going to purchase even the SIM solution also from HP. Like HP is also having a SIM solution that is called ArcSight, right? And other like routers, switches, everything you're not purchasing from HP only, right? You are actually purchasing different product based on their capability from the different vendor. Like in the network, Cisco is one of the giant. Okay. So what we are doing here, we are combining multiple capabilities from the different vendor and then delivering it to the consumer as per their requirement. So there we have there it is basically called as the cloud service arbitrage. So broker is basically the entity which will simply help connect provider and consumer, and they can deliver services to the consumer in three different way: intermediation, aggregation, and arbitrage. Okay. And definitely brokers are also helping provider to get more and more business. Right. So this is the another entity we have. And the one of the another, I mean, the last entity in this discussion we have is this auditor, which is definitely going to play a very important role here, because auditor will help verify whether the product which you are purchasing is actually up to the mark or not. I mean, definitely you are purchasing services from Azure or AWS, but is that services is capable enough to fulfill all of your requirement? That is another question you have, right? So that product needed to be independently audited, and definitely that report needs to be available with you there, right? Based on that report, now you will decide whether we can go with that product, or might be we have to look for any other vendor. So auditor, which is one of the entity which will help us to independently verify the product viability in the market, whether in terms of security audit, where definitely we are looking for to understand how secure the product is for my data to get it stored and managed there. You're also looking for a privacy audit. Just a few minutes back, I told what is privacy is actually. So you also have to understand how exactly the privacy will it get it impacted here, right? So is my data is safe there? Is it going to be exchanged based on my requirement, or it can be shared randomly by the provider with anyone, right? And definitely you're also looking to check what the performance audit. You also have to verify how the product is performing as per the need of the organization, right? So all these things you are going to check it, and definitely this is another entity we are looking for, cloud auditor. So cloud auditor, this is another entity which will help us to understand the overall product capability. So these are the 5 different roles as per the NIST we have, which is helping us to get our product delivered as per the requirement. Now this picture, which I had already explained even in the previous discussion, but just for information, remember the architecture and framework is helping us to decide how best we can implement the product as per the market requirement. And that is where the reference architecture and framework will come into the picture. ISO is focusing on these different point of view there. Like as you can see here, so definitely first you have to understand what is the user view, what exactly user is looking for. Remember, as a provider, you are your goal is to sell more and more product so you can get benefit, right? So if you don't capture the requirement of the customer, definitely that will be very tough for you to deliver the product. So user view, where we are actually trying to understand the system context, the party which is involved in purchasing the services, right? I mean, let's take an example. I'm targeting the Africa um, customers. So in Africa, we have to understand what exactly their core services they're looking for, what products they require, right? And based on that, might be I will be creating the product which is going to help me deliver the services. So first understand the user view. Okay. Now user view is also understanding the system context, the party which is involved, the role which is going to involve, the sub role which is going to work, and the cloud computing activity which the roles are going to perform, right? So it's very much important view we have. First, we understand who is going to do what and what services we are typically helping us to deliver. So system context we need to understand. Based on that, we need to now decide the functional view. So functional view necessary for the support of cloud computing activity, right? Which will help us to implement, right? So once the user view is clear, definitely function is going to be clear for you that what function you are going to provide to the customer, right? So customer requirement we understood. Based on that, I will be deciding what functions I will be implementing. You can simply say the services which we are going to implement. Okay, that services will help you drive the implementation, right? So the function necessary for the implementation of a cloud service within service part and infrastructure part will be decided here. And definitely accordingly, you will be go for what? The deployment. So how the function of a cloud service are technically implemented, okay, within already existing infrastructure might be you're developing a completely new infrastructure that you will decide now here, right? So this ISO reference architecture implementation. Now, just for your information here, ISO 17789, which is one of this, this slide information has been captured from that documentation only. So ISO 17789 implementation and deployment view, okay, are specific to the technology, how you are implementing and how you are deploying. It depends on which vendor you had selected. I mean, you can't say that the way you are doing deployment on AWS, the same way you have to do it on those Azure as well. Definitely the product will change there. Although remember the capability seems to be same only, but the way it is going to be implemented is going to be different, right? So that is the reason this deployment view and implementation view, because it is specific to the technology and the vendor, because of this, it is considered out of the scope for the international standard. Okay. So from the cloud computing reference architecture point of view, only the user view and functional view is going to be captured. Remember why we are capturing here, because this will help us to translate the selection of the product. And based on that, you will be doing the implementation. Okay. Now, if you see this simple picture as well there. Right. Yes, Pushpak, your question.
Raju, can you give one use case of that? Like I need to implement a storage or I need to implement a virtual machine here. Yeah, in the architecture view. Reference architecture.
Yeah. See, first of all, let's understand simply what exactly the customer is looking for. Like customer might be having a requirement that I wanted to store data and might be replicate data to my customer base there. And now you have to actually decide what exactly the function I will be looking based on that. So first we capture what's the customer requirement. I mean, you may be going to the organization and then understanding the requirement. A customer tell that, hey, we have a, let's suppose my organization is basically dealing with the, what you can say, uh, might be insurance. Yeah,
insurance.
Financial data or insurance, whatever you right. So let's suppose we captured that requirement there, right? Now customer data might be you have to store it there, manage it there, and definitely to secure it there. So one of the requirement you capture that customer data needs to be captured there, right? What exactly we need to do in such case? So in such case, we have to understand what sort of function, what sort of services actually required there, right? So user view first we understood. So customer is looking for a storage, right? Now this will help us to decide one service function view. So function view could be like, let's assume that we selected that S3 or might be the Azure storage services there. So we captured this requirement. Now once this requirement is captured, I mean, customer is looking for storage. Based on that, we selected one service, which is S3. Now how this S3 will be implemented, it depends on, I mean, definitely here I had selected one example from one vendor there. But definitely here we simply tell that, hey, customer is looking for a object storage service or might be a volume storage service. And based on that, now we need to define how the implementation will be done. Okay, I mean, what practices we need to follow to get it implemented as per the organization requirement there, right? Right. Now here, based on this, now finally we will do the deployment, right? Right. Now, based on this deployment, we can move forward and definitely get it implemented for the organization itself there, right? So this is a simple example like how exactly normally we move on. Okay.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. Now the next thing, because in the previous slide, it was actually written that we have looking for a user view. Definitely all these things will come into the picture there. Now here it is basically mapping the role, okay, which is definitely one of the people. So this role is basically indicating what? A certain people. Activity performed by the role. Okay, so different role is going to have different activity. So we have a one role and then the different activity performed by the role and the function. So definitely it could be the technical or might be the process oriented. Okay, architecture. First, we are deciding what exactly the people, and based on that, what are the activity that people is going to provide there, right? So overall, one architecture will help you to decide over and on how exactly it is going to map it together. Okay. So this picture is simply showing a basic relationship between roles, then the activity, and the functions which is actually going to perform, right? The view here is combining the architectural element together to describe some relationship or set of related activity. Okay. So first, definitely people selected user view will be decided based on the role what is going to be performed by the user. And then based on that, the different functionality which is going to used by the user and accordingly it will be implemented and configured there. At the high level, it is simply defining what the user is, what services they are going to perform, and definitely what are the different things. Now, to make it more clear, the different roles is defined in the same documentation. Okay. Over and all, it is defining the way services are actually going to be delivered. Right. I mean, if you see this entire architecture, right? So definitely one role is there. Like a role could be administrator, right? Based on that, certain sub roles are created because multiple sub activity within the same role you may need to perform there. Like within the administrator also, we have a service administrator, we have a specific product administrator. Okay, and accordingly that is going to be configured and based on that the services will be managed there. So it depends on what exactly the services are used. Definitely accordingly the roles are selected, managed, and then definitely deployed within the organization. Now we don't need to go into that high level. Remember, these all pictures are at the high level only. We don't need to go into the lower level to understand because uh, in the examination and even in your a product, when you are actually going to work with the customers, you don't need to actually go into that particular lower level specifically defining. But yes, to understand it more better, we need to understand that what roles which this cloud computing reference architecture is talking about. Okay, and how exactly the sub roles are defined here, right? So typically ISO is defining three major roles. Okay, one of them is called as the provider, obviously, who is going to offer cloud services. So as you can see here, cloud service provider who will offer the cloud services. Okay, and within the provider, these are the sub roles defined. But remember, these are some of the examples of the sub roles given there. It doesn't mean that we have only these sub roles, right? Now, so we have role and then we have sub role. So provider is very specific, who is going to offer services. Customer who will consume the service. Remember, it is the cloud service customer who will purchase services from the provider and then offer to their end user. Okay. And within customer side also, these are the sub roles defined. And definitely apart from that, we have the cloud service partner. Partner is very much like a broker. Okay. But remember here, partner is actually one step ahead from the broker, what we had seen in the NIST reference architecture. So in the NIST reference architecture, there is only a discussion of the broker, but here they are basically called as the partners. And within partners, we have the developers who will develop the services for the cloud platform. We have the auditor who will audit the services, and we have the broker who can help customer to get the relevant services there. So these are the partners which is helping provider and customer to get relevant services on time. Right. So these partners are moreover clear for us, only except this developer I can say, because this is the first time we are seeing this developer word here in the NIST reference architecture. It's not given there. So developer who will develop cloud services. Okay, and then make sure that it is tested properly and deliver it to the cloud platform, which is going to consume later on by the provider. Sorry, and the consumer itself there, right? So first of all, let's move on and discuss few more roles which is defined here. As you can see here, we have the first one given here, that is called as the cloud service customer. Right. Now, what is this cloud service customer? A party which is that is in business relationship for the purpose of consuming cloud services. It's very straightforward, right? I am a consumer who will be purchasing and then definitely making sure that my my end users are getting benefit from the same thing, right? Now here there are multiple sub roles defined here. As you can see, one of them is called as the cloud service customer, or simply we can also say cloud service user. Okay. Now here it is generally responsible for the number of activity. Now this cloud service customer is responsible for different type of activity. Okay. One of the activity is using the cloud service, right? So as you can see, one sub role defined here, cloud service user, which is going to use the cloud service. And I think this one don't require any explanation there. We are simply purchasing and using it, simple. Right. But apart from that, cloud service customer base also require administrator, because when you are purchasing services, then that service needs to be configured properly as well, right? So one of the service or one of the feature is perform service trial. Customer will use the service of a provider to ensure that the provider, the cloud service provided is appropriate for their business need. Right. And it is basically not only for the cloud platform, even in your on-prem infrastructure, whenever you're trying to consume a new service, you first request a trial product from the vendor. Vendor will provide you trial product for a specific period of time. Once you're satisfied with the product, then you will be purchasing the service, right? So that the same thing is going to perform here as well. So one of the responsibility of the administrator is to perform the cloud service trial and make sure it is used as per the need, right? Also, administrators will ensure that we are properly monitoring the services which is purchased. So customer is responsible for monitoring the quality of the delivered services with respect to service level agreed by the provider. Also, administrator is administrating the services for the security. I mean, if I'm purchasing the VM, backup of the VM, administrating with a proper security policy, that is my responsibility, right, as administrator. Also provide billing and usage report to the cloud service customer, like how many hours of VM we have utilized this month, and as per that, how much the bills are over and all. Because remember, if you don't have control over the billing, at the end of the month, you may be charged for a very huge amount, which is definitely going beyond your budget as well there. Also, they will try to handle the problem report. So customer perform customer side handling of any reported problem that arise from the use of cloud services, right? So this is the another thing we have there. Apart from that, administrating tenancy. So tenancy might be a specific keyword for a specific vendor. Remember, tenancy might be not the common word for every of the provider. Like Azure. Azure is using this term tenant, right? So much. But the other vendor may not be utilizing. But over and all, tenancy is basically specifying a specific customer, right? So you may be managing a specific tenant. You purchase a tenant and managing it, and there is a possibility that you have multiple tenants in your hood as well there. So administrating the entire tenant, that is also the responsibility of the cloud service customer administrator. But at the same side, cloud service customer is also having their own business. So there is a business manager who will ensure that they will perform the business administration. So customer here manages the business aspect of the use of cloud service, including accounting and financial management there, right? You have to purchase, right? The product you have to purchase, but for that you have to take a proper permission, right? Proper, information to the, the business administration team there. So that will be done by the business administration, and based on that, definitely the selection and the purchasing and any request of audit. I mean, there is a possibility a product which you are purchasing might be going to store lots of sensitive data. So audit report of that particular product should be available with you, not only for your own need, but tomorrow for fulfilling your compliance, you may have to show up this audit report to third party as well. So even that one time also it is required. Okay. Another sub role which is defined under the consumer is cloud service integrator. Okay. Which is definitely responsible for integrating the cloud product there. Okay. This is responsible. I mean, this role is responsible for integration of your existing product. So it's a complete possibility that in your on-prem infrastructure, you are already managing certain identity services like Active Directory, right? So that one you wanted to integrate with the cloud. So you don't have to create user. You may go to replicate all the user from your on-prem infrastructure to the cloud. So that time you required certain product which can actually help you to integrate properly, right? So a cloud service integrator is one of the sub role which is responsible for integrating your existing product with the cloud to ensure that we are smoothly transitioning from on-prem infrastructure to the cloud, or might be we are operating in a hybrid model. So both are, managed properly. So these are some of the role and sub role defined under the cloud service customer. Now this is the another important point which I will recommend you all to keep it for your examination objective. Very important. Okay. Why exactly? Because I had seen few questions around here asking mix and match, right? Where they will provide you the description of the role and the name of the role. So you have to match the exact role, right? So what is the function of administrator, business manager, integrator? At least you must be aware about what they are going to do for you. Okay. Similarly, we have provider as well. This is another role which is defined as per the ISO documentation. So remember, as per ISO documentation, we have three major roles: provider, customer, and partner, right? And as per NIST, how many roles are there? I hope you all remember. Guys, as per NIST, how many roles are there? We just discussed few minutes back.
5 roles.
Yeah, 5 roles are there. Cool. And what are those roles are?
The auditor, consumer,
Auditor,
provider, broker,
provider, broker, and there is one more.
auditor.
Auditor already you told. So we have provider, we have consumer,
Carrier.
we have broker, we have auditor, and
User.
we have cloud carrier.
cloud carrier.
Yeah. Bennett. Cool. Great. So yeah, so make sure that you're aware about that. What are the roles and sub roles? See, from the domain number first, majorly these things are actually important because domain number first is basically testing your knowledge on cloud. So are you aware about the cloud? Are you aware about the essential characters of the cloud? Are you aware about the emergent property of the cloud? Okay. Are you aware about the reference architecture which we are using in the cloud? So far we are discussing the same only, CCRA and NIST reference architecture, right? And in the NIST, what are the rules defined? In the ISO, what are the rules defined? Right. So at least these part, which is very much important from the domain first, although I know that this is little boring because when it comes to the technological side, we moreover, looking to gain more and more insight on the technology part there. But this is important when it comes to the at least the knowledge of cloud. Okay. Bolaji, you had raised your hands from the very long time. Tell me if you have any question or.
Thanks. So I couldn't see your slide properly. I'm struggling to
Oh, is
see
it?
the content on the slide. I don't know if that's just me, but I can hardly
Can you
read
check?
what you.
Can you see now?
I can see, but it's not legible. Like,
Are you logged in with your mobile phone or what?
no, I'm using my workstation,
Ex-
my laptop.
Just
But
check. I think you may have to adjust your the Teams and others screen, I think, because I am very much sure
okay,
that others are not
okay, I
facing
can
the
see.
same issue.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think I
Okay.
can see.
Cool. Cool.
Thank you.
Okay, now next move on. So as I told, we have another role here that is called provider. And as we can see here in the provider also, we have multiple roles defined here. Okay, so let me just tell you because what those roles are doing is already written in that blue boxes, right? But on at a high level, these roles, I mean, the sub roles are there, which is helping us to prepare the system and manage it properly, right? So cloud service provider is very simple, who is responsible for delivering the cloud services, right? Now, within that, we have multiple product given there. Like one of them is cloud service operation manager. So this is the one of the sub role defined here. Now, what is this operation manager will do? This operation manager will ensure that the system is prepared. It means the provider prepare the infrastructure in its environment for new cloud service deployment. Okay, so any of the service which we are deploying in the infrastructure, definitely that needed to be prepared, and that operation manager is responsible for preparing the system before it is getting deployed onto the platform. And when I'm using this term platform, I'm talking about like the Azure platform or AWS platform, right? I mean, remember what provider is doing regularly, they are taking feedback from you, I mean from the customer. Based on the feedback, they are releasing certain product. But before they're releasing that product will be available mostly in the trial mode, or you can say in the testing mode, which is either available to a certain group of customer or might be to available to all customer there. Okay, now they will test the product, provide the feedback, and based on that, provider will decide whether now it is okay to release in the market, right? So prepare the system for the infrastructure. That is the responsibility of the operation manager there. Then monitor and administrate the service. Definitely that is another, not only preparation, but also to ensure that proper monitoring going on, administration is going on, manage the asset and inventory for compute, storage and network, everything that is their responsibility, and audit data to the customer. Because if I'm preparing any system, whether that system is actually fulfilling all the privacy requirement, uh, security requirement, and definitely the performance requirement, right? Everything is up to the mark. So that audit data will be prepared by the service operation manager only based on the ask that will be supplied to the customer. Remember, not all audit report is easily available on the provider platform. Why? Because some audit report will provide very much insight even to the attackers as well to attack on you. So think about a situation that you provided that we are using Palo Alto firewall and we are using this configuration and this is my audit data. Now that can be helpful to the attacker to attack on your environment very easily based on this requirement, right? So definitely that lower level of information sometimes is not available to in the audit report, and it is only available based on the customer ask and after signing the NDA with the customer. So that information is not going to be leaked, right? Apart from that, the another role we have is called as a service deployment manager. Okay, now deployment manager is also performing lots of good responsibility like define environment and process. So the provider deployment manager will provide and define and maintain the required technical environment and operational process which is used to run a service. Also gather metric and deploy and do the deployment. That is also the responsibility of the deployment manager. Apart from that, we have service manager who will provide service. I mean, the provider perform all steps required to deliver a cloud service, deploy and provision the service, and definitely perform the service level management as per the need. Business manager will manage business plan, manage customer relation and financial processing. So all in all, this information already providing that what exactly this role is doing, like customer support and care representative will handle the customer request. Inter-cloud provider will manage peer cloud services and federation and other through which integration can possible. Risk manager will manage risk, design security and ensure compliance, and network provider will manage the network related services only there, right? So over and all, provider is responsible for multiple services to get it delivered, and with the help of these roles, these sub roles, in fact, you can say it is responsibility of the provider to get the proper and adequate service. Remember, these are the high level roles given there. It doesn't mean that only these sub roles are there with the provider. Based on the requirement, it could be different. But remember, this is the standard we are right now discussing. So when it comes to the audit, at least these roles should be there, which can actually help us to these roles or equivalent of these roles should be there with the provider. So we know that what a standard they are following and how exactly the structures and the services are getting managed, right? Similarly, we have the another role defined in the CCRA, that is cloud service partner. And under that, cloud service developer who will design, create and maintain service, compose the service, and definitely test the services as well. Right. So these are some of the key things we can look for here. Right. Apart from that, now, just a minute, guys, here. Okay, sorry. So apart from that, we have a cloud auditor. Now, in case of cloud auditor, here we are going to perform the audit and report audit result as well, right? So perform audit definitely, where we are going to check whether the components are working as per the requirement defined here. Remember, auditor is going to offer you the independent assessment, and based on that only the customer is going to purchase the product. So to have trust, faith on your product, auditor is going to play a very important role here. And we already know what is the role with the broker is actually doing. They will acquire and assess the customer, assess the marketplace, and set up a legal agreement for customer and the provider. So these are some of the core roles we have, which can be utilized, and definitely accordingly, the services are actually going to be delivered in the cloud there, right? Apart from this, ISO is also talking. So these are the roles we just defined, right? But it's not only about the roles, but these roles are going to deliver certain services. And these services are basically here in the ISO documentation called as the cloud capability, right? And these capabilities are going to perform certain service delivery, right? So if you see the ISO documentations, here in the ISO documentation, there are three capabilities defined here. One is the infrastructure, platform, and application capability. And within these capabilities, these are the services which is going to be delivered. Like providers can help you deliver the communication, compute, data, infrastructure, network, platform, and the software products as well there. Right. So these are some of the core component we have which can be utilized. Right. Now, to understand better here, because definitely the same thing is also defined in the nest. So this is basically now I'm actually moving towards the service model of the cloud. Okay, so what is this service model? See, service model, first of all, we need to understand the cloud products are delivered in the form of services, right? And cloud products will be available in a different category. Okay, cloud products are available in the form of different deliveries there, right? So on a high level, if you need to go on, right? So first of all, we need to understand that any product which we are using first required certain infrastructure. Okay. So from the customer point of view, customer will be purchasing the capability in the cloud. In case of NIST, it is called as service model. And in case of ISO, it is called as cloud capability. Whatever we are using, you know, the definition or the explanation of that component will be same. So customer is one of the capability which the customer will be purchasing is called the infrastructure as a service. Infrastructure as a service. So what is happening here? Right. So understanding this way, we require one facility, hardware infrastructure. Right. This hardware infrastructure on top of that, what we require? Certain virtualization component, because definitely it is going to be virtualized. On top of that, we require what? So based on this virtualization infrastructure, we are going to have a VM or any other component like container or whatever. I'm just trying to describe what exactly the component which is going to fall under the infrastructure. This VM is going to have an OS. This OS is going to have some runtime environment. Like if I'm running Java based application, then it is going to be JRD, right? Java runtime environment. And then we are going to run certain application. This application will be managing your data, and the data might be protected with the help of IAM and other security solution which you're looking for. Right. Now, in case of infrastructure as a service, remember, cloud is a shared responsibility model. It means provider and customer both are going to help get services delivered. So in case of infrastructure as a service, the capability provided to the customer is to manage your own VM, OS, runtime environment, application, data, and IAM. Right. So here what we can say, the capability for the customer is at the higher level side. So if you are looking to have total control over the infrastructure, okay, it means you have to build your own, define your own, and manage all set of requirements like compliance, regulation, and etc. So it is the provider who will ensure that all these things are taken care by the customer itself. Provider here will manage only this hardware and virtualization infrastructure, and everything is offered to you via the console. So in infrastructure as service, the responsibility of the customer is at the higher side. So the question is, at what time you will go for this? See, sometime what will happen, you have a huge compliance requirement. Okay. And to fulfill that compliance requirement, you have to, okay, to fulfill that compliance requirement, right? You are going to manage everything by your own because you know your requirement well. Accordingly, you will configure. You have your own administrator who will manage the things for you there. Simple. So here the control over the data and the services is on you. You have proper visibility, how the things are configured. You cannot expect the same thing for the services which is defined by the provider. Okay. So there is a complete possibility that complete visibility you don't have. But yeah, if you require lesser visibility, but things are going to manage by the provider. So in such case, you can go for the platform as a service capability. So here what will happen in the platform as a service, the entire platform will be offered by the provider, like the VM, OS, and even the runtime environment as well. All you will come with your application, run it here, manage your data and manage your IAM. So here the responsibility of the customer is shrinking and the responsibility of the provider is growing. But while the provider responsibility is growing, visibility is getting less for you because you don't know how exactly the OS and runtime environment is managed. All you are relying on the third party audit to provide you the audit report that yes, this platform is actually as per the proper requirement. And that can might be help you, might be not, because sometimes if you have a huge compliance requirement, only this audit report may not be sufficient. You sometime also looking for a complete documentation, which sometime provider may not offer you. Okay, so it depends on how what sort of regulations and what information regulation is asking for you, right? But as you can see here, the responsibility of the customer is shrinking, and definitely there is a benefit here for the customer because customer is having less responsibility. It means they don't have to worry about the OS runtime and other things management there. So you can say the little difficulty while managing the data center, because if you have more services to manage, more administrator, more costing, and definitely the more time is also required for the same there. This is also going to shrink more if you're using application as a service, or it is called as software as a service. So in case of software as a service, even the software is also managed by whom? The provider only. And you are responsible only for the data and the IAM part, right? Okay, so these are some of the key things which we have to understand when it comes to the service capability. So in the capability, simply defining ISO that, hey, who is responsible for what? Who is going to have capability over what component? And based on that, you have to decide which capability model is the best model for you there. But remember, the two things you have to take care: cost, how much investments you are making, because when you are managing more and more services, the cost will increase for you. I mean, think about the infrastructure as a service. You have to purchase VM, so the OS license you also have to manage. If you're purchasing application, even that licensing also you have to manage, right? Everything. But while you are transferring this responsibility to the third party, definitely it is shrinking. And you have to pay less because the same services is actually shared among multiple consumer. So you have to pay only for your own share, nothing for the other users. So that is actually making a good benefit. But definitely at the last, business requirement, you have to decide. In this all service capability, providers will offer you different type of services. Like providers will offer you network as a service. They can offer you software as a service. They can offer you data as a service. They can offer you virtual machine as a service. So remember, there are certain fixed capability which each providers are offering. And definitely each providers to make them, I mean, let's suppose I'm trying to survive in the market. So what I will do, I will try to ensure that I'm doing certain things innovative. I'm providing you more and more features. So that is what right now the race is going on between all the providers. They are trying to ensure that they are front runner. They are offering flexible services to the customer and providing more and more products to the customer. And that is how they are going to win the race, right? Otherwise, there are lots of competition in the market, even in the cloud as well. I mean, definitely right now, the three providers are around right now on the top, where AWS is on number one, Azure is on the second position, and the Google Cloud Platform is the third position. For that, I will recommend you to go and see the Gartner's report on the cloud service provider. So they will provide you who is the challengers, who is the, the other, capabilities are actually there, right? But yeah, over and all, these are some of the capabilities in the cloud we are looking for. Right. So as you can see, some of the property defined here, like in infrastructure service, the scaling capabilities given there, converged network, on-demand self-service, resiliency and high availability. And in the platform, support for multiple language and framework. I mean, think about a situation where you are trying to host one application and that application require a proper platform to manage it there, right? So that platform should have a support of all the different languages like Java, C++, ASP.NET, everything, and even the other frameworks through which you can actually manage the application properly. Remember why it is needed, because if I'm using any platform service, it means that platform is managed by the provider. I cannot change this platform. In infrastructure, I can change this platform. I mean, I can have a support of languages and frameworks, but in case of platform, this is not given there to me. This capability is actually seized for me there. So these proper support should be there. Multiple environment choice has been given there. Automatic scaling capabilities given there. And in case of application, cost reduction, software and application licensing managed by the provider mostly, and also definitely the reduced support cost as well there. Right. So this is how exactly we can move on and definitely manage the same thing. Similarly, if I'm going to check it out onto the NIST side, so we already know this picture on the NIST side. Okay, and definitely these 5 actors, cloud actors, which is defined as per the NIST documentation, right? So these actors, we already aware about user, provider, auditor, carrier, and service broker there, right? Remember, when you are trying to purchase the cloud services is available in a different deployment model as well. See, deployment model simply define how exactly and who exactly the infrastructure will be managed. So another key thing we have in cloud is called the deployment model. So deployment model simply define who own the infrastructure and who manage the infrastructure. That's it. That is the two thing only you have to understand. Who owns and who manage. That's it. See, it's very simple, right? I mean, if I'm talking about this infrastructure in the cloud deployment model, so we have majorly 4. And remember, these 4 deployment model as per what? As per NIST. If you see the other vendor specific documentation, they had only mentioned 3: private, public, and hybrid. That's it. Community in most of the documentation are not there, but because we are going through the standard documentation, so NIST and ISO is specifically focusing on these 4s. Now, let's start one of the most popular deployment model we have, that is called public. So what I told, 2 things: who own and who manage, right? So in public cloud, who own the infrastructure? Third party. And who manage the infrastructure? Third party. Simple. Right. Now, based on these 2 factors, you have to decide, is that cloud model is trusted for you? Okay. Remember, this is how exactly normally we talk to the board of directors and explain the things for them there. Right. So if there is any concern like who own and who manage, so what is the concern? Now the next question is going to ask, what is the concern? So concern is on the privacy, concern is on the security. Okay, how the providers are tackling those concerns. So now we require here the supportive documentation. Based on that, I can convince that Azure and AWS is the best solution because they are taking these measures to protect your data. Right. But over and all, it is managed by third party, owned by third party. So there is a risk if I'm sharing my data to the third party, this can be compromised and the privacy can be affected. So if I need to take extra care, I have to ensure that proper control is taken care by me there itself. Okay. But yes, One of them is called as the private cloud, where so now the question is if the public cloud is very popular one, and why exactly it is popular? Because of the low cost model, right? You have to pay only for what you're using. Simple. So why an organization will go and configure their own private cloud? Because private cloud is what? Private cloud is like you're having your own infrastructure, physical infrastructure. There you're purchasing all the products like server, hardware, and everything. Then you're purchasing the cloud products, their licensing, and then configuring it. So the cost here is definitely higher. At least the initial investment is very higher. Okay. So in such case, why I should go for the private cloud? Because you require control over your resources. See, in case of public cloud, take an example of Microsoft Office 365. So when you're purchasing Office 365, how many of you are aware about that where your data is getting managed? Any one of you? I hope you all are aware about 365, right? Yeah. Although there is an option we have in the Office 365, there you can go and see where your data and services are getting managed, all services. So when you're, because in 365, we have SharePoint, we have Exchange, we have Microsoft Teams, and very many of other products, what they're offering. Like in 365, based on the license, what you're purchasing, you will be getting the Defender, you will be getting the the Microsoft Intune solution for MDM. So many solutions are there. So there you can go and check. But now the question is, it is actually written by the provider. How do I confirm that my data is actually managed there only? Right. So there is always a question we have there. Although with the help of auditors, we can only confirm that yes, it is managed. But remember, auditors are also not going to do audit on each of the services. They are actually, see, audit methodology is pick a sample, okay, do the audit, and based on that prepare the report. It means they are not going on each of the account or each of the product to go and do the audit there. They are randomly selecting a product, doing the audit, and based on that they are presenting the report, right? See, I'm not questioning the audit methodology. What I'm saying that there is a complete possibility, because we have a very bulk of products and services given there. No, any auditors can give you 100% surety that whatever provider is claiming your data, your data is actually managed there only. It means we always have a concern. So in such case, the good solution is, specifically if you are surrounded with a huge regulation and compliance, the best solution is go for the private cloud, because that will provide you very much control over the data and the services, and definitely the ownership and retention of governance control. Now, governance is basically how the things controls are actually under your control there, right? And that definitely that is under your control. No one else is making decision. In case of public cloud, you are always relying on the third party. Who is third party? I mean, Azure, AWS. So you can't say that this policy I want to implement, and Azure will say, hey, yes, I'm happy to implement it there. Right. They don't accept customization most of the time, specifically for one or two customer. But yes, it is, if it is a very broad requirement, definitely it is going to be accepted and implemented then. Right. So if you are moving into the cloud, because you require proper control over your infrastructure, data, governance, policy, everything you wanted to decide, and you wanted to have a proper visibility on the same thing. It means if you require proper governance over everything, including services, data, and policy, private cloud is the best option. But yes, on the other side, cost is very high, right? So now we need to decide, now you have to do a risk calculation. How much money I'm going to lose if I'm going to be non-compliant? I mean, let's assume I'm moving into the public cloud and I falls under the non-compliance. How much money I'm going to lose? How much fine I need to pay? How many customers I'm going to lose because of that non-compliance? Okay. And now how much investments right now I'm doing into the private cloud? Now you will be comparing it. And if you feel that private cloud is actually winning the race, definitely in such case we can go for. But over and all, if you have a huge compliance requirement, it is always recommended to go for the private cloud. And even if it is very costly for you, so definitely you can also go for hybrid cloud, where some of the data you're managing with public and some of the data you're managing with private cloud there. Public cloud already explained, easy and inexpensive setup. Okay. It can scale up and scale down based on your business requirement and no waste resource, because here you're paying for what you're using there. So that is one of the reason these are the very popular model. So if you can manage security properly in the public cloud, definitely public cloud is the good option for you there always. Apart from that, we have a community cloud. See, think about a situation that 2 or 3 organization which is operating in the same country. Think about the financial firms. Mostly they are using similar kind of product. I mean the application. They have same type of customer base. Okay, same type. Remember, I'm not saying same customer, right? Third thing, they have a same regulation and compliance requirement, specifically if they're operating in a certain jurisdiction, right? So what they can do, they can decide that, hey, let's set up a private cloud and we are going to share this private cloud with each other. So if I have 3 customers are there, it means I'm going to create 3 instances in the same data center, and each one of them going to utilize by the different customer, which is going to utilize, right? So community cloud is going to serve a certain community need. That's the reason it is called as community cloud, right? And accordingly, the services will be set up. So it is very much like a private cloud only, but the only difference is here the services are shared between known customer. In case of public cloud, services are shared between unknown customers, and those unknown customer could be one of them attacker, which can steal your data. Right. So as compared to public cloud, definitely it is more trusted model, deployment model, but still expensive, because here you all 3 guys are setting up the cloud. It means you have to share the cost, maintenance you have to do, and everything. So all the investment is still you have to do there. So you will be getting a privacy, security, and regulatory compliance as per the as like what we are getting in the private cloud, but definitely the costing is going to be higher side as well. But it is less as compared to private cloud, right? But one of the most popular model we have when it comes to the enterprise customer is the hybrid cloud. Why exactly? Because here we are taking care of 2 things. First, cost, and the second thing is privacy. So if I have a very sensitive data, I will manage into the private cloud, and non-sensitive data, I'm going to manage it onto the public cloud. So in this way, I'm taking advantage of the public cloud features, and at the same time, I'm making sure my sensitive data is managed in the private cloud there. Also, there is a possibility that you already have certain investment. I mean, think about an enterprise organization. Over the night, they are not moving into the cloud, right? They already have certain infrastructure. So what you will do with your previous investments, if you're thinking to move into the into the public cloud. So definitely those existing infrastructure you can reuse in the form of private cloud and make sure that your sensitive data is managed there only. So most of the time it is a very cost effective model, right? One more possible use case of this hybrid cloud is cloud bursting. Specifically in the disaster recovery situation. I mean, think about a situation that in your private cloud, you're running out of a space. You don't have a storage. You don't have necessary processing power. So are you going to purchase a new machine might be for a few months or might be for a few hours? No, right? So what you will do, you are going to fire up an instance on the public cloud, and you will ensure that some of your request is now going into the public cloud instead of going to the private cloud. So in case of any disaster situation, you can move into the public cloud. Why? Because you already have a setup of hybrid environment. So replication is going to be easier for you, and definitely data movement you can do very easily there. So cloud busting is basically a situation where you are moving out from the infrastructure over and all, right? So these are some of the key things we have to take care. Remember, nowadays cloud consumers are moving into the multi-cloud model. Multi-cloud means they are going to utilize different cloud provider for their consumption. So multi-cloud and hybrid is some of the most popular one. But remember, they are not mutually exclusive, but definitely they are complementary to each other there. So remember, multi-cloud is not an official deployment model. So that's the reason it is not, you will not find in your any of the documentation. But yeah, because it is getting popularity, in future, there is a complete possibility that is going to be added in the standard documentation. right? Because remember, every provider is having their one service which is very popular. Like in case of AWS, S3 is one of their very popular product from the very initial days. Right. So similarly, every vendor is having 1 to 2 certain product which is very popular and customer trying to utilize it there. So with this multi-cloud model, they ensure that they can actually go into the same side very easily there. Right. Great. So quick question for you all. Which of these are the 4 cloud deployment models? And I hope this is very straightforward for you all there. So what is the correct answer?
B.
Bennett already told.
Sorry, D.
Okay.
D.
Okay. Nath already told D. Okay. What about
D.
others?
D.
Cool. D. I think everyone is on to the same note: public, private, hybrid, and community. But definitely other options are not relevant. So the best answer is yes, D. Great. So now we are aware about the overall cloud architecture, cloud deployment model, cloud service model, roles, sub roles. Now we are aware about. Now we will discuss something onto the security side as well. But before that, we can take a break here now. I hope that is fine for you all guys, right?
Yeah. Yeah, let's take a break.
Okay, so same 15-minute break we'll take here, and after that we'll resume the session. Thank you guys. See you after the break.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, welcome back. Do let me know if you're back here.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, so now before we went for the break, now we had the discussion over what exactly, I mean, the deployment model, service model, now we are aware about. Now, moving on, first of all, definitely one capability we are already aware about, that cloud is a shared responsibility model. Okay, and just to add on top of that, that cloud is a multi-tenant model. So shared responsibility model, I think this is very clear that the responsibility is shared between the consumer and the provider. So no matter what kind of cloud services you are using, there is always a reliance on the provider. And definitely there is always a involvement of the customer as well. No matter which service model we are using, and definitely we had discussed only three, infra, platform, and software, which is definitely from the standard point of view, these are the some of them. Now, because we are talking about the shared responsibility model, we need to also understand that not only the responsibility of the services, but even the responsibility of the security is also shared between the consumer and the provider, right? So majorly, there are two things: security of the cloud and security in the cloud. So in the cloud means, see, as a consumer, if I'm purchasing any cloud services, so that cloud product which I'm purchasing, that is my responsibility to secure it. Let's take an example. You purchased a virtual machine in the cloud. So that virtual machine security is your responsibility now. But if that services is offered by the provider, so how that services is available to us, that responsibility is the provider. And definitely that responsibility of the security is for them. So security of cloud data and application is a responsibility that is shared between the provider and the consumer. Right. So CSP, cloud service provider, has a responsibility for security of the cloud. Right. And security in the cloud responsibility is given there to CSC, cloud service consumer. Right. So of the cloud means the task of protecting the cloud infrastructure, which include physical and logical protection both at the hardware level, software level, networking level, and even at the facility level. So the cloud services securely can be offered to the consumer. And in the cloud means whatever services you purchasing as a consumer, that is your responsibility to secure it. Now this picture at the high level is also defining what exactly the responsibility of the provider and the consumer is. Okay. So this color is already given there, that physical infrastructure is always managed by the provider. Virtualization is always secured by the provider. Potentially, network can be shared between consumer and the provider, depends on which service model you are using, right? Like in infrastructure service, virtual network is managed by the customer, but PaaS and SaaS, most probably it is going to be the provider, right? But over and all, you have to understand that if that service you are purchasing, then mostly it is your responsibility to manage it. In case of software as a service, definitely mostly all security responsibilities managed by the provider only, except the interface which is given there to you, that is managed by you only, right? One important thing from the examination point of view, the data and IAM, identity and access management services, this is always responsibility of the customer. Okay. One another thing which we have to understand from the responsibility point of view, that you cannot outsource accountability, right? You can outsource most of the responsibility to the provider, but you cannot outsource accountability. So what does it mean? If I'm working as a cloud service consumer, I'm providing service to you. So let's assume you are my consumer. I'm the cloud service consumer and my provider is Azure. If any data leakage happen, either because of mine mistake or because of provider mistake, accountability relies on me only. So I am accountable for your data, no matter who is responsible for the service. Consumer cloud service customer is always responsible, accountable for the data which is managed onto the cloud there. So no matter whose fault is there, accountability is always with the customer, right? Now, because we are talking about this shared consideration, so definitely few services which is shared between consumer and the provider, right? Cloud computing shared consideration will define that these are some of the core component which you have to understand who is responsible, because this will impact the way you are delivering the service to your customer, right? So one of the concern in terms of shared consideration we have is auditability. Okay, so what is this auditability is? See, understand it this way. As a consumer, you are purchasing a service, right? Then you must be aware about how you can confirm that the service is okay for you, right? Auditor will help you understand how secure that service is for you, or how quality uh, delivery of the services can be done for you there. So auditability, remember, relies only on one component, and that is called evidence. Think about one day suddenly auditor came and asking you that, hey, we wanted to check what exactly the way you are actually doing the service. If you don't have the evidence, definitely you will not win that race that time. Right. So the ability to point to audit result, finding and relevant evidence is very much important here. Now, who is responsible? That you need to understand, specifically the kind of service you are using. In case of software as a service, definitely it is the provider mostly provide you all the audit report. Why? Because you don't have the visibility of any of the services which is offered by them. But in case of infrastructure as a service, specifically the VM you are using, the network you are using, you can generate the audit report based on the logs available there. Okay, so again, the control which is available to you, based on that only you can do certain activity, right? So you must know that who is responsible for generating the audit report and where exactly that audit report is saved. So tomorrow, if you require certain information, you can simply get it out there. Few international standards are there which can help you to get this audit report in the relevant standard manner. Like one of them for the cloud, we have a CCM, Cloud Control Metrics. So right now the version of this documentation is 4.0. So CCM Cloud Control Metrics is basically given there by CSA, Cloud Security Alliance. So they will provide you the relevant documentation based on the audit can be done. CCM 4.0 is basically the collection of multiple international standard based on the audits can be done. And it is not only helping auditor, it is also helping you as a customer and the provider. I mean, as a provider, I know that what controls I need to implement based on this documentation. And as a customer, I need to know that what question I need to ask to my provider before I'm going to utilize their services, right? So auditability is one of the key things. Availability. Now, this is the another concern you have as a customer, right? Availability simply defining if there is any cloud failure, cloud service failure, how exactly I'm going to tackle. Remember, in case your own, if you have your own infrastructure, that time availability you can manage by your own, right? But this time infrastructure mostly managed by the third party. Specifically, I'm talking about public cloud, right? So in case if anything goes down, how exactly it is going to tackle? So typically you need to check with your cloud provider, what is the SLA they are guaranteeing you. So most of the time you're looking for 99% of availability as per the service level agreement. Okay. Failure to do so can result in penalty, reimbursement of the fee, loss of customer, and definitely loss of confidence as well there. Ultimately, the brand will be impacted. But definitely as a cloud provider and as a consumer, we are looking to offer and to get availability, proper availability of the services. You need to understand from the customer point of view that how much availability is okay for you. I mean, in a year, how much downtime is okay for you, and specifically at what time. I mean, if the downtime is happening in your peak business hour, definitely it's not acceptable for you. So you need to understand and you have to modify the agreement with the provider accordingly. Another consideration we have is compliance. Okay. And I hope this is very much clear there, because you are sharing your data with a third party. So their infrastructure is compliant with your requirement. Like let's suppose I'm a customer and I'm looking to host a payment gateway. Okay, so for payment gateway, the infrastructure should be compiled with PCI DSS standard. So now the question is, the provider cloud infrastructure is compliant with PCI DSS standard? Right. So that question you have, most of the time you will get your answer in their portal only, but sometime you have to get a relevant artifacts. Like if customer is saying that the provider is saying that we are compliant with PCI DSS, then you should be looking for a relevant evidence, right? And that evidence will provide you information that yes, this is available. So compliance. Next thing we have is the governance. Now remember, governance is one of the component which is very much important. So what is governance first of all? So governance is basically the collection of rules which will help you define how the services will be delivered. So collection of rule which will give direction to the organization, which is which is basically overall composed of policy, standard, then after the guideline and even the procedures as well there. So governance overall and all is a directive control. It will direct you what is best for the organization and is it followed, right? So governance is the another key thing. Remember, in the cloud, governance is shared. One example we can simply understand in this way. Let's suppose there is a confidentiality policy you are trying to implement in your organization. And because you are moving into the cloud, you want the same policy to be implemented in the cloud as well. As per the confidentiality policy, the data encryption will happen with the help of AES 256 encryption protocol, right? Algorithm, sorry, not protocol. So AES 256 algorithm. But now provider is saying that, hey, we are not using AES, we are using some other algorithm. See, I'm just giving you an example. But what over and all you need to understand is the policy what you are imposing based on your requirement. Remember, your policy you are defining based on your ultimate requirement. You have a requirement to safeguard your customer data. So you need to compile with might be GDPR. Now GDPR is saying to implement AES 256. You are implementing in your infrastructure, but when you're moving into the cloud is saying that, hey, we are not using AES, we are using some another algorithm. So is it okay for you? So definitely it is not okay, because in such case, you are not going to compile with a GDPR. And in such case, that provider is not best for you. So you need to understand that governance is also shared. So can you negotiate governance with your provider as well? And is that provider is okay to negotiate with you? Because mostly for one single customer, they can't do that. Right. So in such case, you have to look for the provider which can fulfill most of your requirement here. Right. So this is the another key component we have, that is called governance, which will help you make decision in an aligned manner based on the organization requirement. Another key thing we have is called as interoperability, and that one we had already discussed in our previous discussion. As a cloud provider, you have to ensure that cloud services are interoperable, right? So no matter where you're operating, you can use the services from any platform. Otherwise, there is a possibility that I am using one product, but might it not be compatible with another platform, right? One simple example you can take is the IAM. You are using IAM control, identity and access management, might be Okta you're using. But if Okta is not compatible with Azure, AWS and GCP, then that product is not useful for you because your services are managed there only, right? So you require a proper interoperability. Okay. Next, we have a maintenance and versioning. Now that is the another consideration you have to understand. Maintenance refers to changes to the cloud services or the resources it uses to fix fault, upgrade, or extend capability. See, the point is upgradation maintenance is one of the ongoing activity, right? And provider have to ensure that it is continuously happening. Okay. And if it is your responsibility because you purchase infrastructure as service, then relevant products should be available in the platform. So even that one too, you have to check it out. Then the performance of the product which you are purchasing, right? Think about a situation that you are purchasing a virtual machine with 8 processor and might be 32 gig of RAM. So you are expecting a very good speed, specifically very good read and write and processing speed. But while you are doing your task, it is not giving you the efficient performance. So now the question is, this much of expenses, so but definitely for the 8 processor and 32 gig of RAM you are paying, but you're not getting the proper outcome, right? So that is another concern from the cloud consumer perspective we have, that are we getting the relevant services? And again, for that you can rely on the audit report. Based on that, you might be first picking up and then you are also checking based on your requirement, is it really equivalent for what exactly I require? And based on that we can make a decision. Definitely. Another thing is portability. How easily we can move from one provider to another or from one platform to another, that will be decided by portability, right? Privacy, we already discussed, is one of the important rights for the end user, specifically nowadays in the world where multiple privacy regulations are imposed on different countries there. One of the perfect example we have is the GDPR, right? Which is ensuring that personally identifiable information is protected properly there, and definitely unauthorized disclosure is not accepted, right? So privacy in the world of cloud computing is one of the major challenges there for the customer, right? Right. Although most of the privacy regulations are coming from the single branch, but still there are some slight changes we have around the globe. So how exactly we are managing the same thing, that provider have to take care. Specifically, a uniform standard needs to be selected to protect the data. And apart from that, the regulations, multiple regulations we have, which we have to fix it. Even that one too, you have to take it out. Resiliency also there. Resilience is simply defined if there is any downtime, how we can still survive. Right. The good thing with the cloud provider is they are offering you multiple data centers around the globe. So even if one of the data centers is down, they can still offer you the services from the other data center there. So at least in the cloud, we are getting a very high level of resiliency, which is most of the time is not possible with the on-prem infrastructure. The reason is cost. You can't invest that much of costing. Remember, the costing you are investing based on the profit you are expecting, right? Opening 10, 12, 100 data center is not a very easy task. I mean, is a huge investment required there, and you may not be getting that much of benefit there. But at least in the cloud, providers are doing it. Why? Because of the large customer database. So definitely we are getting a very huge resiliency in the cloud. Reversibility, that is another important term which you have to remember for the examination. Reversibility simply defined. I mean, let's take an example. You're running your services, you moved into the cloud. Reversibility simply say that is it easy for me to move back to my previous platform? There is a possibility I don't like the services of the provider, right? So I wanted to move back into the previous state. So reversibility is the process for the cloud service customer to retrieve its cloud service customer data and application artifacts, and for the cloud service provider to delete all customer data and contractually specified derived data, which was agreed for that particular period, right? So simply moving into the previous state so we can keep our data and services safe as per the expectation. Right. So that is another key thing, and a consideration we have, how easily you can reverse your decision and your activity. Apart from that, security is another consideration we have. We are expecting a good and high level of security from the provider. The good thing is that most of the providers, specifically the popular providers I'm talking about, they are taking the security very seriously, and there's huge number of products available under the security portfolio by each of the provider, like firewall, EDR, XDR, IDS, identity services, PAM solution. There are huge number of portfolio available there under the security. So you can pick, configure, manage, and that is going to help you to improve the overall security. Sometimes you may not able to provide with your on-prem. It is totally because of the cost part, because nowadays the security products are very costly, right? And your organization will also make a decision based on benefit what they are actually expecting. So that is very important consideration we have. Then service level agreement, definitely SLA, what exactly you are expecting from the provider. Remember, cloud computing service level agreement is an agreement between a provider and a customer based on the taxonomy of the cloud computing specific terms. Remember, for each of the services which you're using, this taxonomy can be different. So that's the reason documentation, you need to read it properly. What exactly we have there, right? I mean, for the storage, there is a different SLA. For the VM, there is a different SLA. So the good thing is that most of the provider had created a, the SLA page itself, where you can go look for what is the service level agreement. Like if I'm creating a single virtual machine, how much availability they are guaranteeing you. And in case if it is not met, how much the penalty. Okay, similarly to offer 99.99% of availability, what you have to do. So that one you can actually configure as per your requirement. So this SLA you can define and configure, right? Similarly, so over and all, these are all the different shared consideration we have as a consumer and as a provider. We have to think about how exactly we are tackling these issues. So as a customer, when you're moving into the cloud, these are some of the main consideration point you have to take it out. But definitely, as per your business requirement, you may have to look for the other consideration as well. So the point is, look for all of these components, how it is tackled, who is responsible, and how we are going to go for any sort of penalty if it is not met, right? And based on that, we can make a decision that which option is best for you there, and what things can be done for the same there, right? So these are some of the key things which we can take care specifically when it comes to the cloud services. So any question guys here so far? Anything which is confusing? I hope these are the straightforward things, right?
So my question
Okay.
is, this consideration, is it only from a consumer's perspective, or is it, why is it shared consideration? Is it?
Okay, so why it is shared consideration? See, first of all, we started the topic with a discussion that there are some, when you're purchasing the cloud services, the services are already shared between you and your provider, right? So when I talk about the shared consideration, what exactly my point of view from the customer side, that as a customer, are you aware about who is managing this part? So if I talk about resiliency, who is managing the resiliency part? Right. So let's suppose you purchase today Office 365 solution. Now your question is, who is going to manage the resiliency part of the Office 365? So because you purchase the software as a service platform, so it is going to manage by the provider. So now it's clear the resiliency is managed by the provider. Now the next question is, what about if the resiliency is not met? Okay, so there should be a proper written contractual agreement that in case if I'm not able to offer you that much of resiliency, then in such case that much of fine is going to be there. Right, and definitely it is not only that, because of that provider reputation is going to be suffered. So the shared consideration why it is saying, because customer have to understand who is responsible. Because security, you can't say that it is provider is going to manage everything for you. No, Security is also a shared consideration where security, some of the security is managed by the provider and some of them is going to manage by you. So the point is, are you aware about what's your responsibility and what's the customer responsibility? I mean, provider responsibility, and accordingly you have to do the configuration. I hope that keeps your answer.
Yes, and you know, the contract, like you said, if anything happens, who manages the resiliency? If there's any default, the details of it is contained in the SLA, right? That's what you say.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
So contracts should be created carefully, and definitely legal team that time should be with you to understand all the contractual language, because sometimes contractual language is very tough to understand, right? So at least we understand all the clauses given in the contract, and we try to negotiate as much as possible with the provider to get the relevant service in a relevant manner for you there. Okay. Okay, so let's move on to the next section. Now the next thing we are discussing on. So now we are aware about the cloud computing shared consideration that cloud consumer outsource some function to external provider as well, right? Like definitely depends on what exactly the service model you are using, and it totally depends on that, right? So software as a service or infrastructure as a service. So the best thing is that go understand the overall contractual language which is created by the provider and understand what's your responsibility, and accordingly make the relevant decision, right? So that is the one of the important thing. Now, next thing is, remember when you're moving into the cloud, one of the major reason you're moving into the cloud is the cost part, right? And it is not because the solution which is available onto the cloud is less costly. It is because the maintenance you have to pay less. It is also because the provider is mostly managing more services for you. So the maintenance cost, electricity cost, internet bill, so many things is actually going to reduce. And plus, very importantly, you're paying for what you're using there, right? So the next thing is basically discussing on the cloud economics there. Definitely it is the costing part there. And simply you can say cloud is a technology, right? And in this paradigm shift, we are now looking for most cost effective model. Right. Cost saving can only be realized through using significant services. One of the most important thing you need to understand about the cloud provider, they're offering you service through a pool, which we discussed in our first session. They're actually creating a very huge pool of resource. And within this pool, most of the consumer are basically using they are picking up the product, consuming, and based on that, they will do what they require. So one of the most important thing when it comes to the cloud economics is this pooling capability, which the provider is providing you. So resource pooling defines the ability of a cloud to serve multiple consumer using multi-tenant model with a different physical and virtual resources, dynamically assigned and reassigned according to consumer demand. Right. Remember, customer demand can be volatile, right? So while tactical measures can be taken to elevate some scenario, but because of the volatile nature of the customer demand, we don't know at what time we require what resources. The good thing is cloud is actually understand the same thing, right? So in cloud, you are going to purchase what exactly require and in whatever quantity you require. And it is not like you have to purchase today and you are going to keep it for forever. No. Remember, in case of cloud, you are going to purchase whenever, whatever you require. So if I require today 2 virtual machine, I will immediately go and purchase 2 virtual machine there. Simple. And if I require tomorrow, might be 10 virtual machine, definitely I can go for the same thing there. So the point is I'm going to simply purchase whatever it is needed for my organization. So upfront payment is not needed there. And also we don't need to decide any baseline, right? Because whenever I need to purchase whatever is actually available in the platform, and accordingly I will go and purchase there. So over and all, cloud computing services are consumed using a variable OPEX model, operational model, right? Based on your operational expenses, you are going to. So it will eliminate long-term investment. Is also a efficient enabler of cross-device access and synchronization of content or application across a single user with multiple devices. And also it will eliminate hardware cost normally associated with a new system or service, because here you are not going to purchase any hardware. You are only investing in the capability. So over and all, the cost, which definitely you have to first understand how much I'm going to investing it. Based on that only you will make the investment, right? But here you don't need to worry about that, because you don't need to guess, and you don't, in fact, you don't need to do any guesswork. Whenever in whatever quantity is required, it is available. Right. So transitioning from traditional enterprise IT infrastructure to the cloud model involves a significant level of investment, operational modification, cultural changes there. An investment normally is driven by the increased use of automation, the staff skill set, and training cost associated with the needed operational changes there. Right. Now, the way cloud is configured, mostly, definitely training and other things, skill set is still required, because we can't eliminate most of the things there. But still, the way it is configured, at least is going to make this entire investment very less there. Right. Specifically from the public cloud side, it is very less. So public cloud adoption has historically delivered significant enterprise IT cost saving through reduced capital expenses, the staff level reduction, and increase operational efficiency as well there. Right. And all these things will help us to manage the overall cost, what actually is required for the organization. Right. So over and all, return on investment is actually very huge here when it comes to the cloud there. Right. Great. So these are some of the key things which we have from this module there, which is talking about over and all the economics benefit and the different the deployment and the shared consideration over and all there. Right. Now, the next thing we will be summarizely going to discuss, because the next concept in this module in our upcoming section is coming very deep. When I say upcoming section, talking about domain 2, domain 3, domain 4. Here, in a high level, it is discussing about the security, right? But this entire course is on the security only, right? So just for a, you can say, kind of introduction of the security given in this next module, which is talking about what? The overall security concepts for the cloud computing. Okay, so understand the security in the cloud. So first of all, when it comes to the security, very simple note, understand how do you measure security, right? So you can measure security based on 3 key parameters: confidentiality, integrity, and availability, right? Confidentiality is talking about the protection of your asset, right? Unauthorized access of the asset, we are trying to mitigate here. Integrity is talking about unauthorized modification. And availability is talking about making sure that your services are up and available whenever it is needed. Definitely, there's some danger we have around this. Nowadays, the group of attackers which is available around us is trying to do damage for what exactly a requirement is. Like there are lots of attacks available, like password-based attack, integrity-based attack, DOS attack, which is going to impact the availability. And remember, CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability is not going to be affected because of the attack only. Sometimes it is because of mistake, right? So definitely mistakes can be very easily tackled with using a proper policy and governance. But for the attack, you have to configure the controls properly. So for over and all, to manage this CIA, we are going to rely on 3 key things: governance, risk, and compliance, right? So GRC is basically created to tackle the risk within the organization. Remember, GRC is an integrated component for all the tools and techniques which can help us manage risk in the organization effectively. Already told, governance at the high level is it will give you direction how to move forward, right? Simply you say in this way that you set up an organization, but if there is no any governance, how long your organization will be going to progress, you can't say anything, right? There is a possibility that you are using very ad hoc and chaos, processes, which may work for a few days, but for a long term it will not work, right? So that's the reason you require a proper governance, and governance is the collection of policy, processes, standard, and very many different guidelines, which can help you to move forward in a correct direction effectively. So overall, all, governance is providing you direction, right? But you cannot get a proper governance. You cannot get, you cannot set proper policy. What I'm saying that governance is the collection of policy and process, right? But how can you set a policy if you don't know what is the risk? And that's the reason where risk management will come into the picture. Risk management will help you to tackle a risk which an organization is facing at their tactical level, operational level, and at the strategic level, right? So you need to understand all set of risk which an organization may face there. So when you're moving into the cloud, definitely lots of concerns are there. Like because of the shared consideration, there is a possibility that your provider may have access of certain data there. It means security and privacy is compromised. So the point is, cloud definitely giving you new benefits, but are you aware about the new risk also which it is introducing? And based on the risk, we can implement the control, and that control should be followed properly. So governance is the collection of all the documentation policy which can help you to effectively move forward by understanding the risk in the organization, right? And definitely you don't want it to implement the governance only. You have to also follow properly. And for that only you are having a compliance. So compliance will ensure that it is followed properly there, right? So compliance will ensure that proper policy standards, which is created based on the risk identified in the organization, is followed properly. And one of the best tool through which you can measure compliance is the audit, right? Audit will help you to measure the compliance, how consistently it is followed, right? Remember, organization may select a proper framework for a governance, which is consistent, measurable, based on a certain standard, comprehensive, it means it is covering entire organization, and definitely modular, because you are having different business functionality, and for each of them you have to implement certain controls there, right? So these things you have to move forward. So organization adopt control framework, which is going to provide you a governance program which is consistent, measurable, standardized, comprehensive, and modular. And for that, and I mean at the lower level, to implement this governance program, you will be relying on what? The control, security controls. So security controls majorly is divided into three: technical control, physical control, and management control. Technical control like firewall, antivirus. Physical control like guard, fences, lock with door, and administrative control like policy, right? So over and all, you require help of all these controls. You cannot rely only on physical control, and you cannot rely only on logical and physical control. You also require a proper process, so it can be followed properly, right? So over and all, you require a consistent framework which can help us to implement all this control effectively in the organization. And for that, you will be selecting a certain control framework documentations, right? Remember, depends on the kind of threat you are facing, you are going to implement a control, right? So these controls is further divided into actions, right? Where you may have a directive control where it is directing, like policy is a directive control. Okay. Preventive control through which you can prevent the attack. Compensative control like WAF with firewall. So if firewall don't work, WAF can compensate the issue of your primary control. Detective control like SIM, IDS. These are basically helping you to detect the attack. Corrective control. Like if you have the data backup, it will help you to correct the situation. Recovery control. Okay. So all these controls and actions are there, which you may implement based on the situation, what you're facing, right? So definitely first you need to plan, establish the defenses, understand the incident, and based on that, you will do the discovery and react and adjust the overall control based on the need of the organization. But over and all, in the cloud also, you have to take support of all these to manage the data breaches which may happen in the organization. And definitely we wanted to improve the overall security within the organization as well. They based on that. Some frameworks are there like ISO 27001, which you can actually follow. So ISO 27001 is one of the ISMS control documentation, which can help you guide how the issues are and what are the controls we have to implement it. So ISO 27001 is comprehensively discussing about all sort of control. But if you're specifically talking about the cloud, then we have ISO 27017. So ISO 27017 will give you guideline or implementing the security controls, which is applicable onto the cloud services. Remember, this 27017 will be implemented on top of 27002. Okay. Remember, 27002 will provide you the relevant control which we need to implement to secure the infrastructure. But remember, your cloud infrastructure is built on top of the traditional infrastructure only. After adding virtualization, API, and multiple other components which is required for the under the cloud services. It means additional control guideline is defined in the 27017 on top of 27002. Right. And at the end of the day, you will be getting certified from 27001. So this number you need to remember for the examination. So cloud specific control is defined under the 27017. Okay. Now the point is why you will implementing this 27017 or 27002, because there are some risk we have and that risk we have to tackle. So to tackle that risk, you are going to have, so there's some common threats we have. Okay. And that common threats you are going to fix it using those controls defined in the 27017 and 27002. What are the most common threats we have? Like data breach possibilities there, the unauthorized modification or distribution of your data, improper configuration. You have a virtual machine, but you don't have antivirus, might be anti-malware configuration, encryption. So that improper configuration will lead to the data breach. Interface attack. Remember, in the cloud, we are very much relying on to the API and the management console like Azure portal or AWS management console. Think about a situation if their API or management console is compromised because of might be brute force attack or phishing attack or whatever. Right. So if that interface is compromised, whatever services configured in the cloud, everything is going to under control of the attacker, can be. Right. Similarly, if identity and access management failure is there, that is also going to create a risk. Right. So over and all, you need to understand what are the critical security threats we have. Remember, this first domain is only talking about these security concerns at the high level, but all of these discussion we have in our coming section in depth. So when I'm talking about data breach, it means we in the cloud data security domain, we'll talk about what are the storage we have and how those storage can be breached. What are some of the attacks which you may expect? Although remember, attack is not a concern of CCSP syllabus. Their concern is how do we protect? But until unless we understand what is the attack, how can we protect, right? So that for that reason, we need to understand the attack as well. Application flaw. If there is any flaws in the application, like suppose we have a SQL injection vulnerability, we have a cross-site scripting vulnerability. So if there is any application flaw is there, okay, also your application may get compromised. And also apart from that, improper use, configuration or implementation of cryptography. Remember, cryptography is actually used to provide you privacy. But if it is not configured properly, you cannot expect the same thing there. So the point is, these are some of the common threats. With the help of controls, and frameworks, we are trying to tackle these issues there. Right. So by implementing it, we can ensure they can improve the security of the organization. Quick question. All hygiene activity are conducted by security staff or a security operations center. Is it the true statement or false statement?
False.
It's false.
False, right? Remember, security is the responsibility of the entire organization, right? So you can't say that security hygiene is only going to maintain by the security staff or security operation. You had taken very precautions when it comes to the configuration and other, but one of your end user who got the training for the phishing attack, but he clicked on the link and the system is compromised, and because of that the entire infrastructure is in danger. So definitely security hygiene is the responsibility of each of the member in the organization, not only the security operations center, right? Great. So this is what we have in the module 3, where we are talking about some of the brief story of the security. I mean, what exactly, first of all, we are expecting. So CIA. And for that, what things can be done? Like one of the security standard we can go for is the ISO 27001. Remember, cloud specific standard we have 27017, which is working on top of the 27002 here. Okay. Now, design principle of cloud computing. Now, when I say design principle of cloud computing, the same thing we have to understand. Shared responsibility model, right? And definitely there's some security consideration we have. I mean, few security attacks which can actually possible, right? Which can create a major risk to the organization. So when it comes to the design consideration, we are talking about how the security within the cloud will be getting managed. Remember, shared consideration. First of all, we need to understand even the cloud. I mean, in the cloud, security is a shared responsibility model that we already understand. Okay. Now, majority of the attack which can possible. Now, remember, these are some of the attack which was created or imported, you can say, as part of the documentation of CSA. So as per CSA, right, there are some concerns we have which can possible in the cloud. Like virtual machine can be under attack. Now, why virtual machine can be under attack? Remember, virtual machine is like your PC, like your server, right? So if a server can be under attack, your virtual machine can be also under attack. Why it is under attack? Because might be your virtual machine is not patched. Might be some insecure services are running. Might be some insecure libraries are running, like Java based libraries are running, right? So the point is, virtual machine can be under attack because of certain either misconfiguration or might be some unauthorized modification. I mean, that could be anything. So your virtual machine can be under attack. So the overall concern is you have to implement control on these areas: virtual machine, virtual network. Now, why virtual network? See, network is also under attack, right? Now, why? What kind of attack which can possible in the network? So in the network, normally we are expecting spoofing, where false identity can be given and the traffic can be directed. Sniffing, where unencrypted communication can be seen by the unauthorized user. Okay. So spoofing, sniffing, and very many other network-based attack like VLAN hopping. So all these are basically the network-based attack, which can still possible in even in the virtual network as well. Right. Remember, cloud is not something which is by default secure. Here also we have the same concern. So the point is, if provider is implementing all these things, they have to ensure this lower level attack possibility is not there. And if you are owning the virtual network, make sure that you are doing proper configuration to secure it. How can we do that? That is the discussion of our upcoming sections. Like when we are going to discuss about the virtual network, that time we'll discuss about how normally we are trying to tackle these issues there. Right. Hypervisor, one of the main component. I mean, think about a situation, your hypervisor is compromised. All the virtual machine which is hosted on that hypervisor is also compromised. It's like your platform is compromised. How can you preserve your VMs there, right? Now, hypervisor is the responsibility of the provider. And when I say hypervisor, I'm talking about like VMware, ESXi, Hyper-V, all these. You know, there are some vulnerability discovered on those hypervisor, but the good thing is the provider policies and governance structure are so strong. So far there is no any major incident detected among the providers, because hypervisor attack means provider directly going to be in question. And if provider is question, their market will, you know, completely swept up. I mean, think about a situation tomorrow you discovered a news that Azure hypervisor got compromised, right? Majority of the customer will immediately seize the business from them. Why? Because if they cannot secure their platform, how they can secure your infrastructure which is running on that platform, right? So it's very much important that they secure the same. Software and platform maintenance, which is either the responsibility of you and your provider, but the point is it will help you to secure your services. Think about a situation where you're not updating your system. It means the latest vulnerability which got discovered, you had not implemented the fixes, right? Denial of service attack, which can possible in the environment, you need to fix it by implementing the DDoS protection tools given there by the provider. Multi-tenancy is the another concern we have, where multiple tenants are using the same services. You have to ensure that all the multi-tenant resources are isolated. So definitely it is the responsibility of the provider, but you have to also take care that all the data which is managed on the multi-tenant infrastructure is properly encrypted with your key, right? Workload complexity. Uh, Workload complexity, like how your virtual machine is configured, right? The more complex infrastructure definitely is going to be more tough to secure it. Loss of control over data resiliency. Okay. I mean, where the data is located, how exactly it is shared, that information, that visibility you must have. Identity and access management and data access policy. So the point is, these are some of the consideration. These are some of the point on which you have to work over that. And in our upcoming discussion, these are some of the major discussion point we are going to do to understand how we can secure infrastructure specifically on these concern area. Okay, and what are some of the challenges which you may face when it comes to improving the security of the infrastructure there, right? Quick question for you all. Which of the following attack is against internal component and availability of the services?
DOS.
DOS.
Okay, so yeah, DOS attack is, yeah, normally we are actually expecting, correct. So DOS attack can occur uh, against internal component, against availability of the service. So remember, it is asking for availability of the service. This is the key point, and availability will be impacted. Yeah. Okay. Next question. So it's a little bit longer. It is. In preparation for moving data to cloud service provider, you are asked to audit the cloud service provider key management and encryption practices. Audit uncover that provider rotate key when an employee with knowledge of the key leaves the business, which utilizes 256-bit of encryption. Keys are stored within the virtual machine, and it uses a single key to provide data at rest encryption for all tenants. Which of the following is the most probable risk associated with a provider's strategy?
B.
B.
Sorry, you're saying B.
Yeah, B.
Okay. Potential for compromise of one tenant to expose another company. Yeah, definitely. Because others weak encryption cipher, no. AES-256 is one of the strongest encryption cipher as per the industry standard for data at rest. So A is not. Loss of data due to poor key management. Yeah, it is actually one of them, but it is not. I mean, if you compare between B and C, B is actually right now at the top. Former employee may use key to access data. Yeah, this is also possible, but because it is asking for most probable risk. So yes, B is one of the most dangerous, which can actually impact multiple tenants. So as definitely the provider as well. Great. So over and all, these are some of the key things we have. So now let's move on. Oh yeah, so the correct answer is B only. Evaluate service provider. Now, see, we discussed some of the high level features of the cloud, right? What exactly we have, share consideration, security portfolio, and definitely the way architecture and framework is actually going to manage. Now, the thing is, how do we pick a provider? See, picking a provider is not going to be a one-day task. Definitely, multiple things we have to take into the consideration. Multiple document you may have to analyze it, but over and all, analyze their work, analyze the peer review comments, analyze the documentations offered by the different providers, and based on that, you can pick. Over and all, you need to analyze, right? So the point is, as a cloud service consumer, determine requirement, because until unless you are aware about what's your requirement, you cannot select a provider, right? Because you may be able to complete your task with a software as a service provider. You maybe complete your task with the help of infrastructure provider. Like your requirement is to upload and share the data. So might be Dropbox is also going to help you. You don't need to go for a very complex environment, right? And might be you have to go for the other solutions, right? So over and all, you need to understand what exactly needed, and based on that, you need to move forward. So understand your requirement, then select. And CSP change technical elements of the provided services. So see, CSP decision, we are not right now concerned about. Our concern mostly onto the consumer side. How do we are picking the solution, right? So if I'm picking any of the solution, what are the things we have to look for? Like cloud service agreement between the customer and the provider, which going to include the overall who is responsible for what, and how do we execute the services which is offered by the provider. So here we need to understand the overall relationship. Acceptable users policy you need to understand. Now remember, this acceptable use policy, normally it is available in their portal, like for virtual machine. So there is a possibility that you created one virtual machine, but that virtual machine you're using for the attack purpose. Because in cloud, you can get a very heavy machine for composing a very good attack, right? But if you're using it, then definitely the misuse of the services, and in such case that product can be seized and your overall service can be terminated there. So detail of acceptable use will vary among all the different platform. So understand how it can be utilized, and legal conditions also for the same thing there. Okay, so understand the acceptable uses, also understand the service level agreement, what your expectation is and what the provider is offering you, right? But definitely apart from that, you also have to look for some of the documentation. Now, right now, we'll not discuss on the documentation side, because that is going to be at the heavier right now. But for now, understand that Cloud Security Alliance is offering you one documentation that is called CAC. This is called as Common Assessment Initiative Questionnaire. Now, CAC is basically some of the questions prepared by the provider, not provider, it is CSA actually, prepared by CSA, and every provider will provide the response and analyzing. Now you need to analyze the response, and based on that, you need to see how much it is aligned with your SLA, how much it is aligned with your acceptable users policy, how much it is aligned with the goal of the organization. And based on that, you need to pick one of the provider which you are looking to implement in your organization, right? But again, still, it is not a very broad data. Still, we need to go into the technical side, which we had not still went it out, right? So which of the
Rajiv,
following? Yeah,
sorry to interrupt. Could you please, spell how crack is? How do you
CAC,
spell crack?
common.
KACK?
It is called as Common Assessment Initiative Questionnaire. So there is a
Common
repository,
Initiative
Common
Questionnaire.
Assessment. Common
Okay.
Assessment Initiative Questionnaire. So there is a repository which CSA maintain that is called STAR repository. That is called Security Trust and Assurance Registry. So in the CSA STAR repository, you are able to find CAC reports of all the cloud provider, whether it is low, medium or high size providers. So you can download all of them and then you can compare your expectation and the offered services. If meets, you will pick one of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Quick question. Which of the following need to be included in the SLA?
That will be A, I think.
A.
So according to your service availability, data access and data location, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yep. I think we all are moving in the very correct direction, right? Definitely it is basically falls under what? The SLA. I mean, this is actually the question, but others are not making sense like network control, change management, right? In the SLA, we are not actually expecting these things, change management, exit strategy. So over and all service availability, how exactly we can manage the data, location, all these things we are actually expecting in our overall SLA. So yeah. So yep, this is what we have guys in the for as part of the first chapter. Okay, so in this first chapter, we discussed about what is cloud, what is shared consideration, deployment model, service model, some of the major concern, and then definitely some of the key area which we have to look for when it comes to the selection of the cloud provider. Quickly, we will take few questions from this chapter, guys. So let's move on. 4 to 5 questions we'll take from this domain. I hope the question is clear. A companies integrate with the potential cost saving from moving business process to cloud. One business process seeks to move to the cloud is data storage. After reviewing the CSP data storage strategy, it is ascertained that it uses public cloud architecture. Which of the following answer will provide the best solution to ensure company data is protected from other tenants?
Well, I think
Because it is asking
this,
for the best solution. Yeah, go
yeah,
on.
it should be the right one.
Which one?
D.
D, implement a hybrid storage.
Yeah.
And why you think that it is the best strategy?
Yeah. Storing the data locally, you'll be in control.
But you are increasing the cost at the same time, right? Don't you
Well,
think?
that's well, you increase the cost, but you have to lose one to get one.
Yeah, because see, the point is, because it is asking for a best solution, right? So see, okay, you are saying implement a hybrid strategy, which using the CSP application storing the data locally. Okay, that could be, but because we need to compare as well with the other options given there. Definitely access control is not a very best option because it can be bypassed. Require
I would say
company data
C.
capability. Yours are C, yeah. Yeah, so definitely the correct answer here, we can go for C there, because encryption is actually one of the major tool through which you can provide security for your data, right? Remember one important thing. We have a problem. Okay, to fix that problem, not only you have to suggest a solution. Remember, I'm just telling you the ISC2 approach. Not only you have to select the best solution, but it should be best cost effective solution. When you are moving into the hybrid, you are actually increasing the cost for the organization as well to protect data, right? Which is definitely not a very good cost effective approach. When it comes to the cost effective approach, inbuilt mostly provided is offering you the encryption. So yeah. Next question. The second business process that the company wishes to migrate to the cloud is the human resource system. It has selected a SaaS. When using a SaaS cloud service model, what tool is the most effective at ensuring the security of a company data?
A.
Ensuring ongoing before being loaded to the SaaS application. No, what is asking when using a cloud service model, what tool is most effective at ensuring the security of company data? Okay, so you're saying A, yeah? Ensuring all company data is kept before being loaded. Okay, what others views?
A.
Okay, see, understand the question here. So we are trying to migrate to the cloud for human resource. We selected a SaaS cloud service model. What tool is most effective? Now this question is little bit definitely, I mean, off the link, and the question is also not because it is asking for tool. Definitely, in such case, in fact, there is no any tool given there, right? I mean, in this entire question, no any option is talking about any tools. Even first A, if you're saying ensuring all company data is encrypted before being loaded, so it's not a tool. Basically, we are following a process: encrypt and then send it to the cloud. Ensure the company has right to do audit.
I think encryption is the only tool there.
Yeah, definitely. It is saying about to encrypt it. Okay. Don't you think this D option is the most suitable as well? Reviewing the shared responsibility model, because in SaaS, what is happening? Most of the responsibility is done by the cloud provider. Okay. So what it is saying, a company is wishing trying to migrate the human resource system, right? So when you're using cloud service model in SaaS, what is most effective in ensuring the security of company data? So first we can review the shared responsibility model between CSP and consumer and ensure that CSP and consumer responsibility are met prior to using the service.
So,
I mean, you
so
should
like you
understand
said,
your requirement.
yeah. So like you said, for SaaS, the majority of the, if not
Control is managed
all,
by third party.
I mean, it's managed by the provider, right? For
Provider.
SaaS.
Correct.
So that's why I will choose A, because D is almost as if it's a given that the provider is doing most of the responsibility.
That's the only tool.
But I think it's D because A only talks about only one aspect of security of the data. But we also need to make sure that when data resides on the software on the cloud, it's protected from the other aspects as well. So D seems to be the most right option over here.
And also, if you see question, the first line, second business process that the company wishes to migrate to the cloud is the human resource system. So they decided that we are going to move our human resource system to the cloud. Remember, they are deciding, right? They are not yet moved it. And accordingly, also the D is actually more suitable for us here. Why? Because here we first understand how the CSP and consumer work and what exactly the provider will do for us. And then based on that, we understand that what we have to do. So before you are going to make a decision that I'm going to encrypt the data and then I will send it to the SaaS, that decision you first need to understand that what the provider is doing for you and what you have to do before you can do anything, right? So yeah, seems
So
to
all
be
round,
D is the.
all round.
Excuse me. If
Yeah.
it's SAS, I think the security of data lies on the
Provider.
customer. It's nothing to do with the provider.
Yeah, data, correct. But see, yes, definitely data is your, and as I already told, the data and IAM is always responsibility of the customer, right? But still, remember, not all SaaS provider will work in the same manner. And that is always important that before you are going to select any provider, you understand what's your requirement and then understand what exactly the provider will do. Definitely in case of SaaS, most of the tools which is offered by the provider is controlled by the provider. Now, on top of that, how can you secure your data? that is your responsibility. They must have been given into the tool, like example Office 365, encryption and other tooling capability they are provided that you can integrate. Like nowadays we are also relying very much on CASB solution, which we are going to talk in our upcoming section. CASB or SaaS solution is you can integrate with a SaaS, SaaS solution to ensure security of the cloud. So if you know what your provider is doing and what you have to do, then you are very clear that what exactly you have to do extra to protect your application, which is going to manage in the cloud-based SaaS solution. Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next question. Part of the company risk management strategy is to ensure that security risk is properly addressed during migration to cloud service provider. Which of the following questions should not be considered during this process? I think this one is very straightforward because it is asking for risk management strategy, right? So it is asking which of the following questions should not be considered.
C.
C.
Yeah. C, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
Total cost of security control. That is not one of the security management strategy question, right? So definitely it is not going to be. But others are actually making sense. Like if the process become unavailable, that is one of the security, which is talking towards availability. Would be the business be impacted if information become publicly available? So yes, confidentiality issues. What negative consequences would the business encounter if process was manipulated? So that is also one of the risk. Total cost is not actually going to fall. It is basically kind of business decision we have to make. So yes, C is the correct answer. Okay, next, company has been experiencing performance issue with an existing e-commerce system. Company has been running the application on-prem, which normally required minimum resource, but periodically experiencing an increased demand for resources that are not available to the system, resulting in deficient performance and outage. Company wants to ensure it can support high demand periods such as holiday, when resource demand increasing quickly without making a significant capital investment. Which concept would meet this? Again, I think it's very
Cloud
straightforward
bursting.
for you.
Cloud bursting.
Okay. Noted.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So because it is talking about, I mean, we had already talked about in the hybrid scenario there. So yes, cloud bursting is the correct answer here. Great. And the last question, which of the, which deployment model best meet business requirement to retain full control over extremely sensitive data, but minimize IT expenditure?
Hybrid.
Hybrid.
That's hybrid, yeah.
So, yes, talking about both retain full control over extremely sensitive data, but also minimize IT expenditure. So hybrid will be the best solution here. Great. So I think, I seen most of you had given the correct answer only there. So I think we are good in that, but still review the content and make sure that we are good in that domain. So it means we are ready to start our domain 2. So we can pause here and we can start domain 2 from tomorrow. I hope that is fine for you all.
Yep, I'm good with that.
Everyone?
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
Perfect. Then enjoy rest of your Saturday evening, kind of weekend evening as well. We'll meet for rest of the discussion for tomorrow. We'll start domain 2. Domain 2 is more over technical, not like, in this domain, definitely we had done lots of discussion from the business aspect, but domain 2 is more over technical onto the data part where we talk about data storage, then concern around the storage, and then the control available for the storage. So let's meet for the rest of the discussion tomorrow evening, same time.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Rajiv.
Thank you, everyone.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.